Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we have a very special broadcast for you this evening. As many of you know, we are now less than 24 hours away from the 19th anniversary of 9/11. It's so hard to believe that so many years have passed by, but many of us out there still believe this to be one of the pivotal, if not the most pivotal issue in this country today, because of all that came after, the foreign, the domestic policy, where we see ourselves with our politicians and those in authoritative power on the internet and in technology today. And to discuss that and so much more, I'm with Richard Gage of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, one of the premier organizations out there questioning what actually happened on 9/11. And as a lot of you know, he, Dylan Avery, and others have been working feverishly to get this new Picture 7 out to the public based on the Fairbanks, Alaska study. So, Richard, first off, how are you? Thanks for joining me. And why don't you let my audience know that don't know you, how you first started questioning 9/11 and what brought you into Architects and Engineers?
I was innocent. I was rooting for Colin Powell when he was making his indisputable case for weapons of mass destruction against Saddam Hussein, and I was listening to this radio show, and lo and behold, David Ray Griffin was there in 2006 in March, and I'm just shocked to hear what, a third tower came down. I mean, are you kidding me? I would have known about this. I'm an architect. I'm a member of the trusted American Institute of Architects, 90,000 members. But they didn't issue one bulletin on the third worst structural failure in modern history. And I'd never heard any alternative theory about how the towers came down either. And here's David Ray Griffin interviewed on Bonnie Faulkner's Guns and Butter program. And I mean, I was literally just in shock as I was listening. I had to pull my van over and into this high school parking lot and listen to this, because I'm hearing all this evidence, like the ends of the beams dripping with molten metal. I'm going, what? He's talking about 118 first responders talking about sounds of explosions, which I never heard about at all. It wasn't a part of the official story. So here is a set of evidence that just put me in massive cognitive dissonance. David Ray Griffin was speaking in a couple of days at the Grand Lake Theater, and I went to see him, and there was 600 people already in the theater. I was late. I couldn't even get in. I had to go home and listen on the live stream, and I was just in shock. I found out that what he was saying, this elderly gentleman who didn't seem to have an axe to grind, he was what he was saying was true. This is all kinds of evidence. We've now been speaking about it for 14 years. But then not even the people in my office would believe me. I bought pizza and made them come in to watch this finally, this graphic presentation in the conference room. And they thought I was nuts before. But afterward, they all agreed with me. They signed my petition, except for my boss, who was Middle Eastern. And he was concerned about his,
he was concerned about how the slave state was going to treat him, because at that time we had coded fear bars where it could be code orange that day, and there was this fervor against anybody from the Middle East that had any ties. I mean, you were immediately a terrorist. This was the time period where Al Jazeera was nothing but a propaganda network for Al-Qaeda. Don't want to say Al-Qaeda. But it was really, unless you lived through it, you wouldn't understand. And, technology, especially the internet, was much different. It wasn't like these videos were everywhere. We were starting to see the birth of the ability to share video evidence with others at the click of a button. And that's how you're able to show these guys just a short presentation on 7 and get them to sign this. Obviously, Architects and Engineers becomes a force over the years. Why don't you tell some of the people out there what you and others have done to try to bring this issue to light, and some of the media that you've challenged and has demonized you personally for daring to ask these questions, Richard?
Yeah, they called us a terrorist organization. Yeah, we have 3,000 architects and engineers signed on to the petition now demanding a new investigation. The media actually branded us, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, as a terrorist organization. I think the Southern Poverty Law Center did as well. Anyway, for the last 14 years, we've we've gone all over the world in 24 different countries presenting this information, and over 100 American cities, speaking to groups from 100 to 4,000. And it's been really quite an experience. We have lawsuits now generated, which include the evidence from a recently completed finite element analysis, major computer modeling study of World Trade Center Building 7 by the University of Alaska. One of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, Professor Leroy Hulsey, and his team of PhD researchers completely reversed the findings of NIST, who says that normal office fires brought down Building 7. And office fires have never brought down a skyscraper in history. And yet here's a skyscraper 47 stories tall that on the afternoon of 9/11 drops uniformly, suddenly, symmetrically, straight down into its own footprint in under 7 seconds, as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. This is free fall acceleration, which means not one of the 80 columns gave any resistance to this fall. I mean, that just doesn't happen except in controlled demolition. And this is essentially what was proven by this major university study, which says that in order for this building, well, first of all, they say that fires could not have brought this building down. Indeed, they've never brought down a skyscraper before 9/11. And there's been 100 examples of much hotter, longer lasting and larger fires in these types of buildings.
And Richard, let me just stop you after the fact as well. Not even just before 9/11. We've had the Madrid fires and so many others. And you could even go to the recent example in Lebanon, where no matter what you believe that explosion was, whether it was an attack or the nitrate they say, there's no other building after the fact that acted anywhere near similar to Building 7. And it took a lot more brunt force from that explosion than I think we've ever seen as a civilian populace. But like you just said, I believe they went with thermal expansion on this one.
Yes, they're saying that thermal expansion because of the fires heated up these beams adjacent to this column 79, pushed this girder off of its seat on this column, and then that caused floor 13 to fall on 12, 12 on 10, and so on for 9 floors. So that none of that could have happened. In fact, the University of Alaska found about a dozen fraudulent assumptions on the part of NIST that they had to deploy in order to try to manipulate other engineers into believing their initiation of collapse theory. None of it could have been true. We can go into it, but what Professor Hulsey found was that in order for this building to fall, as we saw it, how it fell in the videos, they had to remove all 80 columns at once throughout the building, and then, by God, it falls exactly as we saw the videos. And that's amazing. I mean, if they only remove 3 columns, as NIST says, just these 3 columns, 79, 80, and 81, and then because of that loss, 3 more columns, what Professor Hulsey's team found is that the building would begin to tip over, and indeed, completely again pulling the rug out from underneath NIST. NIST's theory is absolutely ridiculous because even if there was a progressive collapse and column 79 buckled as a result of 9 floors not providing lateral support anymore, and then they say this instability traveled all the way up the building to the east penthouse, if there was an interior collapse on that scale, which includes the following 6 seconds where this instability travels over to the west, there would have been massive exterior perimeter steel structure that would be deformed, and consequently the breaking up of granite panels and windows on a huge scale, which we don't see at all. So this is just incredible what they're trying to get away with. And so we have put together a request for correction, which you can do with federal agencies who commit fraud like this. And in it, we have highlighted their 8 most vulnerable points of the hundreds of obfuscations and lies that they have committed in this final report that came out 7 years after 9/11. Let
me just stop you, Richard. Just to say that, yes, 7 years after we pushed them to even mention it in the first place, as it was nowhere to be found in the 9/11 Commission report after 9/11 or in the original NIST report on buildings 1 and 2. So just to get this whitewash, this obvious fraud, this Leviathan against basic physics that's literally this thick, we had to push, shove, and scream. And then now, after they've given us this obviously fraudulent, scientifically fraudulent answer, we've now pushed again another 10 plus years, almost into the 20th anniversary of this, Richard. Talk about just that struggle of it alone to push these quote unquote academics to even have to commit this fraud. And, you know, where we're at now in trying to bring them to justice and point out to the world and the scientific community that the fraud can't stand.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. We're engaged in lawsuits, 3 of them now, at least 3, and more, including the Freedom of Information Act requests that we've put on them. So one is the submittal of our evidence, which we talked just a little bit about with respect to Building 7, but there's also evidence of incendiaries within Building 7 and the Twin Towers, lateral expulsion of 4 and 8 ton structural steel sections trailing thick white smoke clouds, which can only be thermite, which is found throughout the World Trade Center dust, throughout the aftermath, and the molten iron, which is the byproduct of thermite. Thermite being an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. The dust, there's documented in the dust, of course, nanothermite, which is documented in a 24-page peer-reviewed paper by lead author Niels Harrit and 8 others, international scientists, evidence of thermite in these red-gray chips that produce molten iron microspheres when you heat them up, which the USGS finds in all the World Trade Center dust but can't figure out where they came from, and other environmental concerns like R.J. Lee Group. So all of this evidence has been packaged now and submitted to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, and we have now sued him with a mandamus action to prove that he's actually given it to a special grand jury. And that was Jeffrey Berman, who's been fired by Trump. So we now have somebody else acting as in that capacity. We'll see where that goes. We're it's got to go somewhere. We can keep suing until we have satisfaction, because we are in the right. And the same with the FBI lawsuit. We've sued them because they were required in the 2015 9/11 Commission review to submit all the evidence they've gathered since 9/11. The 9/11 Commission report came out, and along with an assessment, which they were supposed to give to Congress, but they didn't give our information to Congress. So they had our information. They had the Blueprint for Truth DVD, which contains a lot of this information, a whole lot of it. And that they said, they wrote back, Michael Heimbach, Assistant Chief Counterterrorism at the FBI, wrote back and said, it appears to be backed by thorough research and analysis. Well, he's not with them anymore. And we're suing them because they had not only that information, but the 24-page peer-reviewed paper, Active Thermitic Materials in the World Trade Center Dust, which was published by the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal in 2009. This is damning evidence. It completely overturns the NIST reports. They're sued, and now there are family members who have had their loved ones murdered in the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers. One of them is Matt Campbell, who lost his brother Jeff in the North Tower, who we only have a small piece of his body. That was identified and there was an inquest, and the inquest says, jet planes and fire brought the towers down. Well, we've got the evidence to prove that that's not the case. And this is a very tailor-made opportunity legally for us to get our evidence in the door, because all we have to prove is that a new inquest might overturn the existing one. And indeed it will, because of the overwhelming and irrefutable evidence that has convinced so many, but we still have a long way to go, Jason. We just don't stop. We keep on moving, and that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow night, the next night, and the next night in our conference, online conference, Justice Rising, 9/11 Justice Rising.
Well, tell people how they can be part of that, because even today, we have this new piece out by Esquire magazine. Originally, it was supposed to be in Wired, but it ends talking about Dylan's new project on 7 and the architects and engineers briefly. But throughout, and I'm actually going to have the author on the broadcast live tomorrow to kind of answer to some of this. He gives absolutely no credence to the fact that we've been lied to about 9/11, other than possibly the Saudi Arabian connection, and then even gives James Meggs some time of Popular Mechanics to go with the old line that the debris field from United 93 is really only 1.5 miles long. After all, everybody said it was an 8-mile debris field, and they said, no, it's an Indian Lake, and it's only 1.5 miles. Everybody Google mapped it. And we continue to point out, and have pointed out, and as I will point out on camera tomorrow to him, that, well, that's not the truth, because they found debris over a mountain ridge in the town over, not in Shanksville, but in New Baltimore. And we have CNN talking about it and conversing about it, and it obviously exists. But these people are able to run the same talking point that's been debunked again and again now, Richard, for over a decade. So
they've got the narrative. They've got the platforms locked up, and as you know, they've got YouTube almost locked up now.
Well, that was kind of the thing in the article, because they were talking about how much impact this had and really kept trying to put the term truther throughout, and that there were truther rallies. I just want to point out this article, the vast majority of it takes place with Dylan, Corey, and I pre-2008. And if you just do a simple Google search, anybody can do it, of news and the term truther, the first time it shows up ever in the media is actually in 2009, April of 2009. That's when the media started to use that terminology, truther, for those that did seek the truth, and then kind of equate it with conspiracy theorist. So the word truther comes up in this article, Richard. I can't even make it up. 39 times. And continually, I will say this, he at least let Dylan and myself, basically say we're not going to be responsible for anything we didn't put out. But how are we even responsible for the term truther when I don't identify as that? I identify as someone who searches for the truth. The 9/11 truth movement was very real. We had the 9/11 Tea Party at the time. The actual Tea Party came out of that. There were so many things that these popularized groups like Hope and Change kind of piggybacked on the success of We Are Change. They took our terminology, they took our movements, and they warped them. And then if you dare question 9/11, what was the big meme? Oh, jet fuel can't melt steel beams, and somehow it became a joke. But the truth is that jet fuel can't melt steel beams. There was molten metal at the sites of 1, 2, 7, and even 6, and FEMA confirmed that. The NASA imagery confirmed that. We have all this information. So I'm sure that over the next few days, you're going to be talking with others not only about this information, but how to penetrate that wall that we always seem to hit, not only in the mainstream media, but now digitally because of the censorship on these platforms. So I guess what I'm asking you is, what do we do about it with all this extra censorship? And how do we go beyond and have these meetings, virtual or not, to bring the truth to the people?
Yep. We've got a lot of work to do. When I started on this 14 years ago, I thought this would be over in 6 months, that people will see the evidence and go, oh my God, you're right. But, and when I did show them the evidence, they do say that. That's what created our first 14 architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And everybody who sees it, with extremely few exceptions, we do a show of hands all across the country, people who are convinced that the official narrative is true beforehand. We only get 0 or 1 afterward in a crowd of 100 or 200. So
0, 1 before, and then afterward, everybody's holding their hand, correct?
Say again?
You said 0, 1 afterward, but you mean after that first raise of hands, you're only getting 0 or 1, and after the presentation, it's overwhelming how many people agree.
Yeah, I may have said that backwards. We only have 1 holdout or 0 holdouts afterwards.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's the way it goes. But the problem is getting people in front of this information. We're trying to present now to engineers. We've spent the last 10 years presenting to architects, and we've been to conferences all over the country, dozens of them. And we've been successful in talking to people, showing them Building 7 coming down, getting them to admit that's a controlled demolition, and giving them the evidence for the Twin Towers and getting them to sign our petition on the spot. The American Institute of Architects finally pulled our continuing education course credit because they said our missions are not compatible. Well, wait a minute. If Building 7 came down due to fires, we're the architects that specify the fireproofing for these buildings. I think we have a problem here, right? Because these buildings were fireproofed and yet they came down anyway. Well, is the fireproofing not enough? Anyway, we've gone round and round with that, and we don't control that organization, so we don't have the final say in reaching their members. So we're now trying to reach engineering associations, chapters of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And we've had 30 presentations. And again, overwhelmingly, once they see the evidence, particularly Professor Halsey's computer modeling of this Building 7 and how the official story can't possibly be true, it's very technical and very tight. So we continue to get that out. We've sent out 75,000 postcards. We're sending out 400 reports themselves to the major engineering associations and high-level engineers in the country, and we're doing just about everything we can do legally, politically. We've been in the offices of every congressperson every year for the past 10 years. Giving them there are petitions sometimes with the 3,000 signatures, the DVD that we might have, the 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out DVD, which is a landmark creation of ours, the booklet, Beyond Misinformation, 55-page booklet, which people can download for free at ae911truth.org. And we have conferences every year. This year, again, it's online, and we're pretty excited to provide a history of AE 9/11 Truth, and that's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern, and that's Friday night. And we'll be talking about our vision for the future. We expect to win these lawsuits and be more successful. We think COVID-19 and the draconian measures that come along with it from governments are what's the word?
Illegitimate, illegal, tyrannical.
Go ahead, yeah. Name them all. They're opportunistic. The governments want more control, and they seize an opportunity like this to just take it. But we've done our homework. We know that the roots of this virus are in great question. and the constitutionality of the response to it as well. And we think that's waking up people, and it'll tie in to people being woken up also about 9/11 through shows like this in the alternative media. So that's just the first of 12 opportunities we have during this conference. The next one is Matt Campbell himself, who will be here to talk about his brother's murder and what people can do to support it, because this conference is free and it's a benefit for his legal expenses, which are in the UK, $500 an hour. This is one of the best barristers in the country. He's already won several key cases against the government, and he's on our side. I mean, he's hot. He's going to be really good. He's going to win this. And then we go into the request for correction that I mentioned, the 8 key vulnerable points that NIST has here that we submitted this challenge to. The column 79 side plate in Building 7. This all relates to Building 7 and the fraud which the Halsey report has uncovered with respect to NIST. The thermal expansion of a particular beam, web stiffeners, key structural components that were removed so that NIST could show that in their computer model that this building could have come down by fire. And then cascading of floor failures, which could never have happened. And then the NIST global collapse analysis itself. The seismic data that shows that, hey, the building didn't create the seismic event that occurred 10 seconds before the building came down, right? What did? Well, witnesses heard explosions before the building came down. And those explosions are heard, and that information's been provided to NIST. And the eyewitness and audio evidence of explosions, and then the severely eroded steel. FEMA themselves, again, 7 years later, FEMA was 2002. They found in a metallurgical examination that they did a great job on, actually, finds hot molten iron and sulfur attack on the steel. The ends of the beams partly evaporated, says Jonathan Barnett of the FEMA team. How does all this happen? I mean, this is a normal office fire. They don't get hotter than 500 or 1,000 degrees. NIST claims 1,400 degrees without any evidence to back that up. But steel, molten iron doesn't even melt until 2,800 degrees. So we have extreme temperatures, as you highlighted earlier, that are completely unaccounted for in the official story. And so we have used, and by the way, NIST took over that investigation in 2002, May, and eliminated that whole metallurgical examination from their final report because that was not consistent with their narrative. So all of this we challenged in a 100-page document expertly produced by Ted Walter, Tony Zamboti, and Mick Harrison, and they will be here to talk about that document and NIST's response to it, which was to deny our request for correction. So now we are appealing it, and after that we will bring a lawsuit. So that's pretty powerful in and of itself. But then we turn it over to the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry with Dave Meiswinkle, Barbara Honegger, Mick Harrison, and they have yet another special grand jury investigation petition that they're putting forth tomorrow. And that is all about the anthrax on 9/11, which those of us who have done our homework find that Bruce Ivins was not involved in that false flag operation.
Yeah,
by the
for those that
FBI.
don't know, Richard, especially now with all these biological agents being talked about, the drills being run, our civil liberties being eroded, it should be noted that not only the fear of terrorism was used post to 9/11, but we had this anthrax that was micronized and led back to Fort Detrick. So it looked like our own military, at least on some level, was involved in the production of this stuff or knew about the production of this stuff somewhere. And the entire thing ended up being this weird whitewash where Ivins wasn't even the only one first accused. Okay. And it was a real debacle. A lot of people forget that did not live through it. But I think that's so important to kind of put with the rest of this information, especially in today's climate where I feel like that fear of a bioweapons attack is now being hyped up again by Bill Gates in particular, actually.
Yeah, I've done my homework on this too, but I can't talk any more about it because it is outside the span of my technical credibility, and we want to stay in that so that they don't label us. But we're my only hope is that you and others are waking people up big time to what's being done to them. It's another 9/11. It's no less. It's actually more. It involves everybody who has to wear a mask, who can't go to work, who can't go to a restaurant. It's a huge control mechanism here. But that night, Saturday night, we also go into the details with Dylan Avery's new film on Building 7, finite modeling analysis, done by the University of Alaska. That film is called 7. It's 45 minutes, and it comes out in about a month. We're very excited about it.
So wait, are you going to be previewing the whole film on this? Because that'll probably get my audience to show up for sure. Are we previewing 45, or are we going to show the 5-minute mini doc that was on PBS the last few months?
I'm going to give your audience 17 minutes.
17
Jason.
Minutes.
Yeah. The contract with the distribution company who's going to put it up, on Hulu, iTunes, and hopefully Netflix and so forth. They said, you can play parts of it. So we're going to play some really good stuff I haven't even seen yet myself.
Okay.
So, and I'm, so next we got, the analysis of Building 7 itself by Professor Halsey, is being presented by Roland Angle of our project due diligence team. But Professor Halsey will be there the hour before that, along with Dylan, talking about his experience doing this analysis. And then we have not only David Ray Griffin, not only Stephen Jones, but Niels Harrit all together on the same platform Saturday night at 5 p.m. Eastern. Now, we haven't heard from these folks in years, David Ray Griffin and Stephen Jones particularly. So this is a great opportunity for them to reflect with us, the 9/11 Truth Movement, on their experience. Of course, David Ray Griffin's written 14 books now on 9/11 Truth Movement. Stephen Jones is primarily associated with the groundbreaking documentation of extreme temperatures in the World Trade Center dust, which is just huge for those of us who are trying to get the attention of people who value facts and science. So that completes Saturday. And then Sunday, we've got Daniela Ganzer, an expert on false flags and wars of terror before and after 9/11. He's from Switzerland, so that'll be pretty awesome. It's the online conference that enables us to bring all these folks into one platform. John Whitehead of the Rutherford Institute, constitutional attorney, will be talking about the advancing police state post 9/11 and why 9/11 truth is so important to pursue, to wake people up. And then the whole thing is capped off by James Corbett on 9/11 censorship and censorship in general with YouTube and the ancient example. The Library of Alexandria is on fire is the name of his talk. Of course, that happened 200 BC. It's a first example of YouTube censorship.
So what time does this all begin? So my audience can, grab the popcorn, get ready, get involved. Are you doing this via YouTube? Are you doing this via your own platform? Is there going to be a live chat? Explain how this is going to work for everybody.
Yeah, right here at our website, ae911truth.org. It's all free. Just show up. Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. That's tomorrow. Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern. 3 hours each night. It's going to be awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, Richard. Obviously, I've been a big supporter of yours for years. I'm glad to see you still in the game. I'm glad to see that we're still putting out more and more information and pushing back against the lies. aside from just the conference, how can people financially support you? Because we all know we can go to the website, we can download the Fairbanks, Alaska study, we can show small videos, we can point people in the direction of this evidence. But in order to get the boots on the ground to really bring that information to people that might be able to push further change, nobody's done more in regards, in my opinion, via the controlled demolition than your organization. So how can they financially support you?
Well, right now we're raising funds for Matt and his family to hire this first-class attorney. It's going to take $100,000. They're $500 an hour. So this is how we need your support right now. All this money goes to them. This is a benefit for their attorney, really. But this is the way to get this evidence, which we've been collecting for 14 years, into the international court system. So on our website, ae911truth.org, you'll find the donation button for this project. It's right there. And please assist us.
Well, Richard, you obviously are welcome any time. I love what you do. I want you to keep on rolling, man, and I'll be tuning in tomorrow for sure throughout the afternoon, evening to see what's going on. And I just want to wish you Godspeed. I can't wait to see the entire 7 documentary. I hope that this thing not only gets distribution, but gets people asking questions again, because it's already been almost 19 years too long. And, you know, it could be 2021. Our republic's never been in more visible, dire straits. And I think we need a little truth to kick this country in the ass and get them ready and get them going, because, you know, the Constitution and Bill of Rights are really important things. And this event of 9/11 has eviscerated those on a massive level that I think people are only beginning to understand now.
Yeah, the Military Commissions Act, the Patriot Act, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, all of these decimated. We can be arrested right now. You, Jason Burmis, can be arrested for being associated with terrorism. And guess what? Terrorism isn't even defined. It's defined as force, and force is not defined. So, yeah, be careful. It's designed to be used to take out people who are talking and who are talking truth.
All right, Richard, we will see you soon. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the opportunity.
Always. That was Richard Gage, everybody. Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. Remember, you can go check them out at AE911Truth on Twitter. You can go to AE911truth.org to see all their great stuff. The donate button, like I said, right there is on the top. And I do encourage you to financially support these guys. And as you know, that was just 37 minutes of some pretty harmful content. That's why we are fully demonetized here, because we are not going to make compromises. We are not going to lie to you. We are not going to, censor ourselves and not bring you the truth and real information. So $5, $10, $15, big donors. You mean the world to me. Tomorrow, again, I will be having John McDermott, the author of that Esquire article, on the program. We're going to have Dylan Avery on the program. I plan on doing a watch-along with all of Loose Change Final Cut on the program. And I'm also going to be on Adam Kokesh's program, Adam versus the Man, tomorrow as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you all on the flip side.